Your pressure reading from your air integration disappears mid-dive. What should you do in the next 10 seconds? By end of this video, we'll know exactly how to respond and which pressure setup fits your diving without adding unnecessary risk. I'm Don, and I want you calm, in control, and prepared for real-world failures with the very gauge that tells you how much gas is in your cylinder. I will show you how SPGs and air integration, often just called AI, actually fail, and how to read the cues fast, and how to choose the simplest setup that keeps you safe. And a quick gut check before we start. Are you SPG, AI, or undecided? Type it in the comments now so you can see who you agree with at the end. Let's dive on in. Two divers can sit on the same boat with similar gear and still make opposite choices about how to display cylinder pressure. For one diver, air integration feels like the smart upgrade because it feeds the computer and logbook without extra steps. Not to mention a little bit extra data points like automatic calculation of your sac rate, or some extra benefits like calculating your gas consumption rate and how much is left in your cylinder and which is shorter, your NDL or your gas consumption when you should start surfacing. For the other diver, another electronic link is one more thing to babysit in an already demanding environment. Also, air integration is expensive and complex. Under both opinions is the same word: trust. Trust comes from lived experience, and once it sets your risk tolerance, it does not flip overnight. There are, of course, two main ways to see pressure on your cylinders while we scuba dive: the traditional SPG on a high pressure hose, or the wireless transmitter AI. Not to be confused with artificial intelligence, which, that acronym is too relevant these days. These things don't have AI in them yet, but that will be an interesting experience when they potentially do. Talk about trust. But AI is also often on a high pressure hose or plugged straight into the high pressure first stage port, which I'll just mention some divers prefer to be on a hose as well, because these bases, this is expensive already. And so when someone potentially grabs your tank, they might just grab it by the AI and snap it right off. So there goes your expensive investment. So it might help to have this on a high pressure hose, so it discourages that kind of grab, especially for boat diving. Both show the same numbers, but the path that the number takes to reach you is different, and that is where the debate starts. Divers who used early transmitters remember dropouts and crosstalk when another diver swam past using the same frequency. That would be super annoying. But modern units pair by unique serial number and are far better at avoiding interference. But if you personally lost gas data at depth years ago, that story will set your bias for a long time, and there goes your trust. Where you dive matters too. Open water reef dives with a clear ascent route make using AI feel more reasonable for many recreational divers. If something goes wrong, you can always ascend straight to the surface with minimal risk. Of course, with safe ascent rates. Caves, wrecks, and coal load visibility dives have tighter exits and slower ascents, and pressure leak there is a bigger deal. So a battery-free mechanical gauge makes sense because it's tried and true, versus this complex thing that you probably can't really tell what's going on inside of it. Maybe it really does have AI inside of it. So here's the key framing for the rest of this video. A lot of the debate is often around what happens when one of these fail, and which one you trust more to save your life. You obviously need to see your gas somehow, and so what's your preferred mechanism? If we think about it, this one is a lot more mechanically and electronically complex than this one, which just has mechanical complexity. Air integration failures can be silent dropouts where you just stop seeing the readout of your gas, but they can also have high pressure loss from their O-ring blowing, and if you also use a hose on it, the hose is also a failure point as well. So an SPG generally just has the hose failure point, and of course this could fail as well. So similar, but less, because this one, as long as there's no failure in the gas getting to it, this one will still show a reading, while this one has electronic potentially running out of battery, or maybe there's an electronic short, maybe there was a sun flare that day, who knows? There's all sorts of things that could potentially happen with this guy. So that is a consideration. That difference changes how you feel underwater and how fast you must act. In a second, I will show you exactly what those failures look like and the next steps to take when they happen. Imagine this with me. You check pressure mid-dive and something is wrong. Your computer freezes at the last value or shows dashes, or your SPG starts bubbling at the swivel and the needle does not track the way it should. In that moment, your plan shifts from precise to uncertain, and every second you spend diagnosing is gas that you lose. Field reports and incident reviews point to 5 common problems in the SPG and 3 common problems in transmitter issues. On the SPG side, you can see high pressure hose leaks, rupture or O-ring at the swivel, internal corrosion or grit that jams the needle, fogging or sticking in the gauge body, and seeping fittings at either end of the hose. On the transmitter side, the common issues are low or dead battery, a rare electronic malfunction, or loss of communication from blocked signal path or lost pairing. And of course, if you're using hose, you can add all the hose failures from the SPG as well. The failure behaviors matter more than the list. A transmitter issue is usually a quiet information loss. The number freezes or disappears while breathing continues. Of course, there are still the occasion O-ring, or if you're using a hose, breaks in those as well. An SPG can create bubbles you can hear and feel at the risk or first stage. And it's not just a little bit of bubbles, it's usually attention demanding because it is a leak at high pressure. Still, it's nothing to be alarming. You'll have enough time to handle. Rates will vary depending on the specific failure, but you should treat any high pressure leak as urgent and start the exit while keeping control of buoyancy and pace. Meaning you got to abort the dive immediately. But in recreational diving, you'll generally be able to have very clean ascent rate to the surface, and you can even generally have time for a safety stop as well. Your particular response is going to depend on training and environment, of course. If a transmitter drops, you confirm the failure, check time and depth, signal your buddy, and either continue conservatively if you have a pre-calculated backup gas plan, or call the dive based on your pre-planned gas margin. If you do have a gas plan, you can just continue using that gas plan because it's pre-calculated and usually conservative enough. If you don't have a gas plan, it's usually good to just abort the dive. You may have lost live feedback, but the gas in the cylinder is still safe. So if you know exactly how long you have at different depths according to the gas plan, effectively all you need is a timer to which a functional dive computer is sufficient. If an SPG or high pressure hose is leaking, you confirm the source, signal your buddy, and begin to abort the dive. One nice benefit of having a twin set, meaning 2 cylinders, is that if the high pressure hose is leaking, you can just turn off that cylinder and make use of the other cylinder and still have a little bit of dive time, but also probably good to abort the dive as well. Technical divers are trained in valve and isolation drills and may feather a valve or isolate a post while moving to control loss, but it is a trained skill, not something that you can improvise. For recreational divers, generally the right move is to signal the brake and abort the dive, ascend in control, and be ready to share gas at the end of the dive. Recognize the cues fast. One thing is nice is most modern transmitters have significantly reduced crosstalk through serial pairing, and most dropouts today trace back to low batteries, blocked line of sight, or poor maintenance. Treat batteries like any other consumable and replace them on a pre-trip or annual cycle so you never gamble on the last few hours of charge. Okay, so now we talked a little bit of how these things can fail. Let's start talking about configurations next. But first, if you're enjoying this video, now is a great time to like and subscribe. I post weekly content to help divers grow their skills, build confidence, and explore the ocean with curiosity and care. And by the way, if you're interested in the latest and greatest scuba news and some scuba tips, feel free to subscribe to my monthly free newsletter. The link is in the description below. So ultimately, we have 3 options to explore here in terms of configurations. Do you go with the age-old SPG, the air integration, or use both? Let's take that thought experiment here and explore these options. Option 1 is AI only. Pros being clean hose routing, integrated logs, simple glance to your wrist for gas, time, and decompression context, built-in SAT calculations, and fewer physical joints and swivels. Cons would be battery dependence and vulnerable to comms loss. So you must replace batteries on a schedule and verify pairing before the dive. And in the worst case, a mid-dive dropout means you might lose live pressure until you surface or switch to a backup device if you brought one. It's best to fit straightforward recreational dives with clear ascent options where your plan has generous reserves and you're disciplined about pre-dive checks. Option 2 is SPG only. The pros being no batteries, no pairing, one simple mechanical path from the cylinder to the gauge, and generally only mechanical and pressure related failures to watch out for, such as the hose, the swivel, or internal issues inside the glass. Cons being more hose routing, one high pressure hose that can leak at pressure and demand attention quickly, and no automatic logging or integrated consumption tracking. Plus, in some cases, I have heard of these being smashed with cylinders, especially getting out of the water. These can also be grabbed and snapped off, so out of the water both have their own volatilities. But the best fit is minimalists or traditionalists who prefer fewer things to babysit and who want to avoid electronic dependencies, and divers in conditions where simple and robust feels safer. Ultimately, AI doesn't buy anything more than the SPG does aside from slight streamlining and automated computations. As an aside, the amount of gas you have showing up on the dive computer is nice to have as it keeps the number in a very easy to spot location. If you're using a twin set with independent regulators often used for side mounts, these things are super nice because you can have both information on your side mounts right on your computer, which makes it even more appealing. Generally, we'll put your SPG somewhere easy to locate, but you might have to reach down and look for it and then maybe take your eyes off of looking forward to look at your SPG. While your dive computer is always kind of in a nice position in front of your eyes if you're in good trim. So now let's talk about option 3, which is the best and the worst of both worlds. Dual wielding AI and SPG at the same time. The pros is that if one fails, you have another ready without surfacing, depending on the failure, if it's not bubbling. And you can keep the convenience of AI while still having a mechanical readout available. The cons is you have added components and almost double the failure points. And because the SPG lives on a high pressure hose, the dual setup does not remove the most consequential failure. It can still leak at pressure and force you to abort the dive. This is the most important line for deciding. Dual wielding your gauges gives redundancy of information, not redundancy of gas path. If you choose to run both, do it for fast cross-checking, not to pretend you eliminated a critical failure path, which can be the hoses. That single distinction will help keep your thinking clean. Some divers prefer to run both on purpose because they need immediate cross-checking to make sure that the AI is accurate with the SPG. If this stops giving a readout, they can switch over to the SPG. They accept the extra complexity as a cost of the environment, and they maintain the hoses and batteries aggressively. For most recreational and even tech divers, the simpler path is usually stronger. Pick one primary gauge and maintain it like your life depends on it, and have a plan for what to do when it fails. For AI, the plan would be to replace batteries on a schedule, verify pairing before you splash, and call the dive if the live pressure disappears and your gas margin is not generous. For SPG, the plan would be to inspect the hoses, check the O-rings, replace worn parts proactively, route the hose cleanly and ensure there's no flexing or snagging in the hose, and treat bubbles at the swivel as a sign to end the dive immediately. And you can do what I do when I travel, which is take and primarily use AI, and in case my AI breaks or someone grabs it in the wrong way, I do keep a SPG ready in my save a dive kit so I can swap it out on the next dive. So I will still abort the dive if this fails, but I will have an SPG ready to go in case for the next dive. I won't try and swap it on the dive. AI and SPG at the same time is generally the worst of both worlds, as it doubles the HP connections that could fail and drain the cylinder on a dive. Some still prefer it, and if that's you, that is entirely fine. We all have preferences, and the goal of this video was to point out the pros and cons to each configuration, and more importantly, to help you choose what's best for you. And more importantly, whichever you choose, think of what you will do when it fails and have a contingency plan for your trip and possibly your dive. Remember, if you have a gas management plan, you can still finish your dive as long as your HP connection is not leaking, and stick to the plan with a buddy. Without a plan, it's better to abort. To help make sure your AI is ready to go for a dive trip, make sure put in new batteries or at least confirm there's plenty of juice left, and confirm it pairs fine. Double check that the O-ring is in good shape too and seals well on your regulator. For SPGs, you do a similar check with the O-ring on the SPG, but also check the joints of the hose. Sometimes your SPG can screw in, so make sure that is a tight connection. I've once had a O-ring blow on me inside of this housing and it was fine. Fortunately, I had a save a dive kit and I could replace the O-ring on there, no problem. And I actually discovered it before the dive on a pre-dive safety check. So that was kind of a bummer that it blew out right then and there, but no problem with a save a dive kit, and they're fairly easy to fix. And before the dive, you ideally want to pressurize it and then turn off the pressure and just check to see if the pressure is holding after you turned it off. So ultimately, choose the simplest configuration that you want to maintain over time and that you can operate under stress without hesitation. That's the one that's going to be best for you. My position is simple. AI only is fine for most divers if you are disciplined with batteries and pairing, while using SPG only is equally valid if you prefer fewer dependencies. And lastly, dual wielding is a conscious choice for trained divers who accept extra failure points to get immediate cross checks. So which camp are you in? AI only, SPG only, or do you dual wield? Tell me in the comments and add one sentence about why your choice fits your diving so others can learn from your context. I always learn something from all of you sharing your comments of interesting configurations, and that helps me expand my knowledge. I'm sure other divers will appreciate it as well. And in this video, we talked about gas planning. And so if you want to make sure you have a backup plan in case either of these fails, depending on the failure, obviously not bubbling, then you can still continue your dive because you have that gas plan. Check it out here. Also, you might be interested in learning about regulators here. The more you know, the more you'll love and protect the ocean. Until next time.